So as John said, I'm Jeremy Jones. I'm an AVP on the Customer Success team. For those who I haven't worked with, nice to meet you. Everyone that I have worked with and the Marketing Evolution team, nice to see you guys. And today what I'll be talking to you about is combining data. Everything that Rex just went through, everything that he just discussed, the bedrock of that, what allows us to be able to do that is data, data integration, and pulling in multiple data feeds. So data, and in this case, big data, big. Data analytics, data integration, data mining, data science, all topics that you see talked about more and more lately, to the point that we now have data about how much we talk about data. And as you see, over the past 15 to 20 years, the Google trends on data science, big data, data visualization, all growing exponentially over time. And it's not just a buzzword. This isn't just a fad. This is a competitive advantage that allows the people in this room, the people that take advantage of data, to have gains, to have performance in the marketplace that your competitors won't, because they're not on this same ship. And this is rocket fuel to everything else that you're doing, all the strategy that you're applying. But that wasn't always the case. If you look back in time, data used to be expensive, difficult to get. Everything was in spreadsheets. Analytics, it wasn't analytics. It was studies that you would run once every 3 years. You would put together a PowerPoint and that would get vaulted. And every few years, somebody would pull that out to justify decision making. It wasn't real time, it wasn't analytics, it was science, but it was slow in its nature. And even, I'm sure some people in this room will remember a time when even PowerPoint didn't exist and everything was being put on slides that would go on an overhead projector. I know I've heard stories from people before. And that was the old world. And in the past 20 years, data began to multiply. And we see that it went from those spreadsheets to an advanced, robust matrix of analytics, of data that allows us to answer more and more complex questions. We really started to see it happen in around 1995 with articles such as what we see on the cover of Wired there. I know I have this framed in my room. That's how much I love data. And just kidding, I don't really have this framed in my room. But you saw articles and conversation around data at individual level, recommendations, as Rex said, making music recommendations at the person level. And that was a whole new world that didn't exist before the turn of the century there. And even to the point now where in 2012, Harvard Business Review saying that data scientist is the sexiest career moving forward. I wish I had known that when I was in high school taking calculus class. That would have been, I would have been touting that. But you see now today, even LinkedIn, Facebook taking it to the graph schema and really building out these networks, webs of data that allows you to understand at the person level and see the connection between facts. And what the graph schema does, what this individual level, person level data set does, is it moves us away from the aggregate, away from male, female. So we're not taking this room, having all the males go stand on one side and all the females stand on the other side like it was a 6th grade dance. That is not what we're doing with analytics before. 20 years ago, that is what was being done. Now we see that move to really speaking to the Rex in the room, the Jeremy in the room, the Christine in the room, the Alexis in the room, talking about that individual person so that we can have the most beneficial insights. We can action on that person versus action on the aggregate. And there's advantages to that. And to do that, we need to pull in a variety of data sources. We can't just rest our laurels at knowing male, female. We really have to know each individual person. So we pull in first party, second party, third party data. Example of some of the data that we pull in with, I like to call her Mary, is what I named the picture up there. You can see all those different touch points that are laid out that we're ingesting into our databases to be able to explain and know who Mary is as a consumer. it gives us that deep person-level understanding that is necessary to do the scaled personalizations, the analytics that we're looking to do. And what it does is the graph schema, it ties all those data points that we just looked at back to you. So it's similar to all roads lead to Rome. All data leads to, in this case, me, Jeremy. And rolling that up to a higher level, so this is looking at me individually. Now it's great to know who I am, but there's a schematic structure to that, over top of that, of the graph schema. And the way to think about the graph schema is think about tiles, with each tile representing a different class of data. So we have media data coming in. Where are your placements being? We have consumption data that we also tie in, and we map out that. We map out demographics of the consumer. We also map in purchasing history. And what it allows us to do is build out a consumer genome to help us understand each individual consumer, and then stacking those individuals up to make a population, a group of consumers. And as Rex mentioned earlier, it's an organizational system. It doesn't require the same amount of information on each individual person, but it's really flexible in its nature, and new facts can be consistently layered in, added to the graph schema to continue to build on our understanding of who the consumers are. And some of the facts that we added. So now we'll pivot into building out a graph schema and understanding each of the individual elements that go into it. And I'll build out the graph schema on myself so that you all can have a very good understanding of who I am. And the first building block of that is first-party data. It's the most powerful data. It's coming from your teams, and it's the CRM data of the world, the demographics, sales, transactional data. It is the core building block of everything that we build out around it. Example of when.
I'm just raising this because I can't hear you.
I'll wait for her to raise it so everybody can hear me. We're good to go, everybody? Awesome. First party, it's transformational. There's been multiple situations in the course of our company's life cycle where we've seen customers that we have built a long-standing relationship with, provided analytics, insights, recommendations that action upon, see great benefits in the marketplace. The question always lingered though, what was the financial impact of that? Moving brand health metrics, brand love, brand affinity, that's great and that's the goal. How many dollars am I getting for that? And so we've seen with multiple customers, we're then pulling into their CRM data, their transactional data, pulling in that first party information, marrying that with the data sets, the graph schema that we already had built out at the individual level, allows us to tell you at the individual person, how many dollars did we receive did your brands receive because you moved that person to a brand lover, you moved that person to having positive imagery, positive intent. What is the positive financial upside of that? It's transformational. Adding in, layering in this first party data will always provide a boost to what we're doing. And there's me. And we see some first party nodes coming in from your teams, total sales, purchases. So I purchased my most recent car purchase in this example. Well, we're working with a car manufacturer. My most recent car purchase, a Toyota Corolla, bought it in graduate school. It's still carrying me over about 8 years later, and I think I'll keep putting miles on it until I have to move on. Pulling in demographics, information on where I live, the type of high-level information that you would have in your customer data sets. So you know that I'm a male millennial, on the high end of the millennial, but proud to say still a millennial. And it allows us to begin to map out that understanding of who I am as a consumer. And also store locations, which is vitally important when we think about local advertising, and especially in a car manufacturer case with dealerships, local advertising is a very important data point to be pulling in. And that's a starting point. So this right here, starting point, it gets us to the 40-yard line. Then to continue to build out that understanding of who each of these consumers are, we have to start pulling in other data sources. If we stopped at first party, it would be great, and it would provide a lot of deep understanding of who the consumers are and how to best act upon them. But to continue to build out that genome, we have to start layering in third-party data. Third-party data is the data that's readily available out there that could be purchased, could be partnered with Nielsen's of the world, pulling in their data to help to continue to understand who these consumers are. A great example of third-party data, which I'm sure a lot of folks in the room have seen us present on and talk about, is tapestry segments, which are the geolocal segments. It's bundles of zip codes that match zip codes based off demographics. And we've seen it have great power in local marketing situations. So when you have opportunities for local TV to understand which messages are working best against which segments at a geographic level, layering in this tapestry information would be how to get there. So taking that, third-party data, we're all comfortable with what that is, and starting to build out, layering it into the graph schema and continuing to build our understanding of who Jeremy is. So we have commuter route. We pull that in from third-party data, tapestry segments, weather data, search, social, all being pulled in from third-party avenues. Media consumption, building out partnerships to pull in those media consumption data points so that we know where I live in the media ecosystem. And segmentation, so if you work with DMPs, if we work with Exalate, pulling in those Exalate segments to understand who I am behaviorally so that we can act on me as best possible. And so my search history, you see that I've been looking up a lot on green energy, solar panels, all of that, really getting into making myself green as possible, a garden in my backyard. We know that I never miss an episode of NCIS. I love all of them. Leroy Jeffro Gibbs, I wish he was my father. And I've told my father this before. Love the show. I live in suburban splendor. That would be the tapestry segment that I belong to. And I'm a sports junkie. Go Red Sox. I'm sorry, any Yankees fans in the room. And so it allows us to continue to know who I am and building out that deep understanding of Jeremy. And then this is where it gets even more advanced when we start talking about second-party data. Second-party data is another organization's first-party data on your consumers. So it's harder to get, but it's very powerful because think about how transformative your own first-party data is, and now multiply that by all the second-party sources that we could be pulling in. So we like to think of the media, the plans that the agencies are building for the marketers as second-party data. Another form of second-party data is pulling in transactional history outside of the transactions that you know about because they're with your brand. And for example, TV placements, CBS primetime, so all the media is being bought on NCIS, which is a good plan. And I purchased a diesel pickup truck in North Carolina when I was there for undergrad. I didn't really, but I was very tempted to because all my friends in North Carolina had pickup trucks. And you start to continuously build out that understanding of, you start to really know me. And then we pull in the fourth-party data. This might be a new term for everyone, and it's our analytics. It's the engine that we're layering in, the propensity models, the perceptions, the attitudinals that we're pulling in from our measurement system, from our analytics engine, is fourth-party data. And so now we layer in the impact-based modeling. We know that I respond better to digital advertising than I do to TV or print advertising. We know my brand perceptions, my intent. Do I love this brand? Do I have intent for this model? We know all of that about me, which allows us to begin to understand how those different facts are interrelated. So you found out a lot about me, probably more than you thought you would before starting this session. And now the key to the graph schema is understanding how does that all work together. So the blinking lights, how does intent, how does brand perception with impact model lifts, how does that lead to purchasing? Or how does media consumption and where that media is placed, what segments are that working best against? Having the graph schema laid out like this, we can start to see between those nodes, how are they related to each other and how can we best leverage those facts in our media plans and our media buying to have the greatest benefits possible. And while it's great to know all about Jeremy, I'm sure none of you in the room are building marketing plans based off just influencing me. It'd be great if you were, I'd be flattered, but I'm sure that's not the case. And the power of the graph schema is we then start to layer consumer A, Steve, on top. And then on top of that, we have, I can't think of a name right now, Barbara, on top of that. And we continuously layer individual graph schemas and understanding of each individual person until we're now looking not just at the person, not just at Jeremy anymore, but at the entire marketplace and how all those facts that we learn about each individual person and how they're interconnected, how they layer and stack on top of each other so we can have that clear line of sight into what we need to do to drive more sales for you, drive more love, drive more intent. And that gets filtered down into these impact heat maps. I hope everyone in the room has seen these before and are familiar with them. And we start to understand that, CBS primetime, it works better with high-income consumers. So that's great. Leroy Gibbs is really put a message against that, and you're talking to high-income consumers, and you're impacting them. We see non-prime time working better with the tapestry segments of hometown and simple living. Scaling those individual persons, that graph schema, allows us to do this, which then gets pushed through our technology stack. And we won't go through the details there. There's a lot going on in the technology stack. Just know that this is the roadmap that the individual understanding goes through to ultimately get to those media plans, the scaled personalization that you'll hear being spoken of a lot today from one of the first few words out of Rex's mouth to some of the last few words we'll say before we break for the day. And hopefully not too much at happy hour, but if there's a few drinks in me, we might be talking about scaled personalization at happy hour. And it allows us to build out the media plan to best impact Jeremy, to best impact Mary, and layer all that on top to then start making recommendations, well, you want to lean more into CBS primetime, because those are the people that are looking at your brand and are being impacted by this message. Message B might work better on ABC daytime, because while it's not working with the high-income consumers in the segments that are watching NCIS and are being impacted by that, it's working against these other individuals that live over here in media. And the benefits for that is really better intelligence, better media plans, not having waste in your buys. So you're now making sure that each impression is going against the person that it will impact best and the person that will resonate the most with that message, and you can drive upside for your brand. And ultimately leads to conversations around what's the financial impact, bringing it to your controllers and having the conversations around by making these changes, this is the upside, this is the gains that we'll see, and this is what we can do for the brand. Now I know throughout the day we'll have deeper dives into the graph schema. We'll have Vince walking through the graph schema. At the Passport session, we'll have Joel bringing you through the graph schema, showing you how all the data integrates together. I hope you all enjoyed this session, that you enjoyed finding out about me and my likes, what I buy, and I hope to talk to all of you later throughout the day, and thank you very much for your time.